Okay, we will also want an idle animation. Okay, let's create a move left animation first. Set one enemy one underscore move left, and we will do the same thing as we did with the moving right animation. Okay, we will drag and drop the frames to create the animation. Okay. Now that we have done that, okay, let's take a look at the moving left animation. Okay. So now that we have created the moving left and moving right animation, we can drag and drop the enemy to the prefab. Okay, and once we have done that, we can delete this. And we can create an enemy when the game starts. Okay. Okay, but before we do that, we will need to make sure that it is not your first time playing the game. So if it is your first time playing the game, okay, the game will show things like left right to move, Z to jump, and so on before spawning the first enemy. Okay, so let's go to our code to see how to do that. Okay, so we do not need this. Okay, we need to create a new script called spawner to spawn our enemies. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so under controller, let's call it spawner. and over here we will create an empty game object and we will call it spawner. Okay, let's move it below the game manager. Okay, and let's use the spawner to spawn the enemies. Okay, so to do that, let's go back to mono develop. So we are at our spawner. Okay, we do not need the update, but we do need an array, and let's call it game object. An array of game objects to spawn. Enemy. Okay, an array of enemies. Okay, and we call it enemies to spawn, so that is easy to remember. Call to start spawning enemies. Start spawning. Okay, so when start spawning is called, we will create enemies and make them appear. Okay, so to spawn the enemies we need to have a point where they will be created. And when they will be created. Okay. So we need a vector to spawn point, and we need a index, so we know which type of enemies to spawn. Spawn index. Okay, and that means we have to have multiple types of enemies. So enemies to spawn type 1 and enemies to spawn type 2, enemies to spawn type 3. Okay, but for now we will just use type 1. Okay, so to spawn an enemy, we will do this. Okay, enemy equals to enemy, enemies to spawn type 1, spawn index. And we will move the enemy to where it should be spawned. Spawn point. Okay, but we want to keep calling new enemies. Or we want to keep creating new enemies if the old ones are defeated or destroyed. Okay, but before that we want to keep spawning new enemies. So let's do that. So instead of doing this here, okay, let's do it in a coroutine where we can keep calling it. Okay, so to create a coroutine, wait, then spawn enemy. Okay, float time vector to spawn point and our spawn index. Okay, you return new wait for seconds. Okay. Okay, and we spawn our enemies. Okay, you need to know if we want to continue spawning new enemies. Okay, sometimes we do not want to spawn any more enemies if there are already too many enemies on the screen or if the stage is over. Okay, if continuous spawning equals to false. Okay, but when we call start spawning, if continuous spawning will be true. Okay, so if continuous spawning, okay, we will call okay, we will start a coroutine. Float time. Okay, for the first time, let's just call it 0.1. Spawn point, spawn index. Okay, call to spawn. Call itself to spawn again if new enemies needed. Example, when there are not enough enemies on the screen. Okay, so that should keep spawning new enemies. Okay, so when do we call start spawning? Okay, when the game starts and when it detects that it is ready to spawn new enemies. Okay, that is true when you have gone through the tutorial steps and if it is not your first time playing the game. Okay, so if game has already been played before, we will call spawner to spawn the enemies. Okay, so we will need to link the game manager with the spawner. Okay. Okay, all these are references or other links depending on how you want to call them. And let's go to start game. Where are you? Okay, so if the game has already been played before, we will call spawner to start spawning. Okay. Okay, but just for testing, we will do it here as well. Okay, just for testing. Okay. Start spawning, but remember that to start spawning we need our spawn point and our spawn index. So to get our spawn point and our spawn index, we need our platform manager, because enemies will come from the gap in the top edge. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, we have our top one gap point, and let's set it to public. Okay, our current random index, we have to set it to public as well. Okay, so over here we can just call wait. We will need to link our game manager to our platform manager. Oh no, we do not need to do so, as the stage manager is connected to the platform manager. So we can just do stage manager dot platform manager dot top one gap point, comma, stage manager dot platform manager dot current random index. Okay. So let's see if that works or not. Okay, let's go back Unity. And before we test it out, we need to create, or rather link the enemy to our spawner. So let's go to our prefab, our enemy here. Okay, we also need to link the game manager with the spawner. Okay. Okay, now let's test it out and see if it works or not. Okay, so it works. As you can see, the enemies are spawning one after another, and it doesn't stop because we have not done a check to see if there are enough enemies. We do not continue spawning. Enemy and enemy. Okay, but before that, let us change some physics settings. Okay, our enemy has to collide with the ground. And he has to collide with the player. Okay, enemy with ground, player with enemy. Okay, ground, player. Okay. Okay, and if you have noticed, the enemy will also spawn from where the gap is at. Okay, so if we stop and start again and play the game again, okay, as you can see, the gap moves randomly and the enemy spawns from where the gap is. Okay, okay, so let's go back to our code editor. And ensure that we do not want the spawner to keep spawning so many enemies. Okay. So we will need to keep track of how many enemies we have spawned. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, spawn enemies. Okay, so for each new enemy that is spawned, we will add it to the spawn enemies array. Okay. No. Okay, let's use an array list for that instead. Array list enemy, or rather enemies spawn. Okay, enemies spawn dot add enemy. Okay, enemy spawn equals to new array list. Okay, so every time we create a new enemy, creates a new enemy, we add to enemies spawn. Okay, so if enemies spawn is greater than or equals to 3. Okay, just for testing, we we say we do not want to continue spawning. Okay. Okay, so let's test that out. To do so, let's go back to Unity. Okay, so this time we should only see 3 enemies. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, and no more spawning of new enemies. Okay, but we also have to make sure that the enemies stay on top of the walls and platforms. Okay, so let's do that.